Hi, it's Martin from Martin's Engine Services. Well, it's time for part two of the Myford ML54 or mf54 or ML50. Well, one of those combination of numbers. It's as I said in the previous video, it's never exactly sure what model this is, but it's a 1940 Myford lathe, put it that way. Anyhow, I've got everything cleaned up and ready to put the new belt back in. I've done this, cleaned all the major components up. Now, what I've actually done, as I mentioned previously, with this, a lot of oil comes through this machine, I've actually machined out the back of this gear. I've machined a small recess in the back of this gear, and you can't really see it, but I've slightly tapered the edge of the hole, and I can put an O-ring in there. And this gear runs up against the bearing here, goes tight up against the bronze bear or brass bush or bronze bush here, and the O-ring will help stop some of the oil migrating up the shaft. Well, that's the theory anyhow. If nothing else, well, it'll help spread the oil around a bit more. Sorry about that funny noise, I'm eating yet another throat sweet. I'm living on them at the moment. And phase one, before you do any of this, is put the new belt in. Because I've done it several times, and I know anybody who's ever done this has done it. You put it together and thought, oh, I didn't put the belt in. Now, I know you can get joinable type belts, but they can be a lot of hassle, so the easy way. Now, putting all this lot back in is a bit of a juggling act. Obviously, I've now got to get an O-ring on, various washers and bits and pieces, so there could be a little frustration involved in this. But I'll put the camera in the stand and we'll have a go at doing that. And if it all cuts away for 5 minutes, well, there's bound to be something falling out. There is actually an additional thrust washer in here, which we fitted. It's not actually a factory part, and that I've actually just put that in place with 2 spots of super glue, so it can't fall out, because I've obviously got the rest of the thrust washers to get in, and all the other bits. So let's see how we get on. Right, well, we got the foam balanced very precariously again, and I'm not sure how it's going to stay there, but hey ho. I have put the nut onto the front of the ball gear here. No, it's not the ball gear? Yeah, onto the ball gear, just to stop the plunger falling out for a little bit of sanity. So, it's a question of oil everything up and then simply reassemble. I think this is one of those things where you need to put every single thing in at the same time and hope it all stays put. Right, it's all everything up nicely. Considering this hasn't been the part for, say, I'm just trying to think. I think I may have pulled this apart once for cleaning up, but there is nowhere on any of these parts we've repaired, refurbished, bits we've added to shafts and that. I'm really surprised and more. Not so much surprised, just delighted at how well this has held up. Granted, it doesn't do a great deal of work these days, but it still does work. So, and it does tend to get some of the more brutal jobs when I machine things, so it does tend to work a bit harder than it used to. No, hang on, I got it confused. It does tend to work a bit harder than the other smaller lathe, but not so frequently. If that makes any sense, I think so. Right, what I'm going to do, I think, is I'm going to find a steel rod to put in from the back to try and hold some of this together. Yeah, that's going to work. I'm going to try and sort of say hold some of these bits together so it doesn't all go falling out everywhere because I've got to try and get that to go in there, and that's got to go in there like that. We've got to manoeuvre this into here, without losing the belt. Well, you all saw it come out earlier, so it must go back in the hole somehow. There we go. Well, that's incredible, isn't it? There we go. And we just slide that into there like that. Shove that lot up there. Right. Now all we got to do is get this O-ring to go into here. Oh, now this could be the fun bit, folks. Martin has spotted a potential problem in his new redesign here. Right, okay. I know what we can do, it's alright. Hang on, folks. We can actually move this bearing out slightly. Bear with. It's alright. There we go. We take that little screw out of there. And I believe that we should be able to slide this bearing that way, he says confidently. Okay. Right. Hang on a minute. I'll just pause you while I violently remove that. Right, there we go. Just need a tiny little bit of persuasion. Now we've got enough room to get the O-ring down inside there. Theoretically. And we've got to get that lot shoved. Now just falling out of there is a tiny little piece of, actually, I think that's cardboard or wood to keep the bearing from over tightening. I'll tell you what, when Dad made that, he made that a good fit. Right, now we've lost the O-ring. Oh no, stand by, folks. Ah, there he is. Now we'll slide the O-ring into the gap where the bearing is, or was. And these should slide onto the shaft like that. Then we can slot this gear into position like this. Jiggle that gear there up into place. That should drop into there. Now we've got to find the position for the back gear pin. Right. Now very carefully, there we go. Get that through there. And we've got to get that O-ring. Actually, I'll tell you my thing I might do. I might just pop the bearing, actually, all the way out. Yeah, that's the answer. Wow, it did make that a good fit. Right, that solved the problem. Pop that out of there again. Slide the O-ring along there to there like that. That's it. Now I've remembered now, as this is the third attempt at this, this is the original bearing that was actually machined out to take the new sleeve we made. That's right, that's it. Got it now. Now, we slide all this lot back through here like this. Then we got to jiggle the thrust washers into place, which is going to take a bit of doing. Slide that gear there out of mesh, it gives us a bit of free play. And with a bit of luck, open that. You can get your finger into there and you can just maneuver all the thrust washers into place. There we go. And that should go into there. I'll find that in a minute. Just one of the thrust washers is just sitting slightly out of line, so it's a question of alright, you don't want to watch me fight that for 5 minutes. I'll bring you back when we got that in. Got it. Just had to get a small screwdriver around the back there and just give a little jiggle about, and away she went. Right, now this obviously has got to be set back in place. Now I'm going to have to pull the shaft out to get that screw in, but we just tap everything back in gently like that. Perfect. Now I can pull this shaft forward a bit. The O-ring's doing its job already. Pull that forward like that. Don't pull it out too far so the thrust washer falls out. Now we're just going to make sure this is lined up. And then we got this little tiny grub screw back in. The grub screw does have a point ground on the end, so it will. There we go. That's in there now. This is very important to get this little bit of cardboard into this bearing. We'll pick up the split in the bearing behind here. Very, very gently open it up like that. Slide this little bit of cardboard in here. Just one slide in there. Only one bit went in. The thing is with this is you've got to make sure they're in there, because this will stop you over tightening these bearings, which will break them. I think Myford actually put little tiny bits of wood into them actually. I know on my ML4 next door I've actually got a piece of sort of like very coarse sort of rope actually embedded in there just to help solve this problem. Okay, we'll go and get a new bit. Hang on a minute. Right, got it in there. Just got to trim it off now. I have actually got this packed with string actually. Find out that also helps with the oil coming out. And this does reduce the tendency, it does actually give you sort of a guide when you tighten these up as to when the bearings are getting very tight. That'll do. Right, so that's gone back in there alright. That's all gone back on there, okay. And even with that fully adjusted now, there's still hardly any play in there, so bearing adjustment will be later. Yes, we have got the belt in. Success. Now I've got to line up the hole, the grub screw hole with the shaft, and there should be a mark on the shaft somewhere which I failed to take note of, so just have to take the screw out and find its location. I think it's actually in line with the woodruff key slot in the back. Well, now on my other lathe, it's all lined up nicely, because when we made, or my dad made a new shaft for it, he'd actually mark everything, so you can find all the positions of all the marks where everything goes quite easily. This is the next best method. There it is. Right, there it is. Now I'm going to have to actually very slightly leave this gear that way against the O-ring just to keep it tight. So I'll do that and I'll bring it back in a sec. Right, that's gone in okay. The O-ring has tightened things up a bit. It may destroy it, and I don't know. What I'm thinking of doing is putting the counter shaft in and just running it without putting. I don't need to put any of this in to run it, and just see what happens. Just put that there, and just to see how it behaves. Right. So obviously this shaft does take quite a lot of load around this area, because the whole weight of the motor is basically hanging on it. And they're only cast iron bearings. There's nothing in, no bronze in there. So it's basically just steel running on iron. But I know that's a new shaft, but the bearings themselves weren't worn. Now always remember to put this on the right way round, otherwise you'll have all the same speeds. Again, that's one of those ones that we've all done. Right, let's check that runs okay. Right, okay. Now we put the belt on. I want to make sure that none of these are dropped out of their little points. They sit on basically just there's a tape on the end of a grub screw, and they got a point on the end, and they sit in a little tiny cut out in the casting, and sometimes they can actually drop out. And with the belt on, they're an absolute pain to adjust. So yeah, that's right. That's better. Yeah, because with the weight of the just the pulley in the way, or the belt in the way, you try and adjust them, they drop out. The best way is to put it in, adjust them, then put the belt back in afterwards, so you know they're all right. Now these the holes for locating the grub screw on this pulley are quite easy to get, because they're all in line here. Put a little thrust collar on the end. A little bit of end float. There's actually a little bit of wear in the pivot pin in the counter shaft, but I don't think we complain about that too much. Now you've got to make sure that things are staying pretty much in line here. So they seem to be pretty good. Yeah, obviously you don't want the belt running off at too much of an angle. There is a small amount of movement on this pulley, so it seems to have settled nicely. Just do that and it seems to settle itself out quite nicely, so we'll leave it at that. if we can get the Allen key to start right. Okay, do that one up nice and tight. Spins freely. Okay. Now I've got to put the nuts on the end of the shaft there to control the inflow. We don't want it because there's a tendency, obviously. No, it'll be all right. No, of course it will. The grub screw's in there. It's on the shaft. No, that can't come out. It's all right. Okay. Mine's getting ahead of himself. So let's put the main drive belts on, or one of them on, and just run it. And that is a very heavy motor. I remember when we was assembling this lathe, because we didn't have any belts, and there's obviously a very critical point on the length of this belt by how far this comes out here, and the fact that the weight of the motor keeps this in line. So this has to be there or further back, and we had to experiment. I think we had a couple of different belts and we got it in the end, but I know it's a problem. In fact, it's almost like it could do with the belt being fractionally longer, but if you put a longer one on, the counter shaft drops over centre. I mean, you could shim this counter shaft where it bolts on the lathe. You could adjust all that, but it works fine. Occasionally under hard cuts, this will do that and you'll lose drive, but I'd rather it do that than anything else. I mean, I do tend to leave the you can't actually see that properly, but I do tend to leave this loose, and the weight of the motor controls the belt tension. So if you do get a cutter jam up or something, it does tend to just let this drop forward and disconnect the drive for you. I mean, you can ram that round there, but it literally just sits there. So I think, you see, when I went the wrong way, that's what it did. So we put it down there. Right, just have a free turn by hand, make sure it's working right there. There may be a little chattering, it may just move that gear in there, but there's no reason why we can't run that. We put some oil on, so we don't want to run it dry, as the bearings are empty now. And it's always at this part in the job when the oil can runs out. Right, success. There we go. All running nicely. There's a slight chattering of gears there because I've actually got one of the back gears engaged. Normally that wouldn't be running in this configuration, but I've just put it into mesh so it's safer that way. Yeah, working nicely. The oil's just starting to come through now. Because what tended to happen when the oil migrated up inside this gear, it was coming out of this gap here, and that was getting all over the belt. So hopefully that O-ring will help. We never know. Worth a try. So that's that basically back together again. So I do actually think that the pulley on the motor should be smaller on this, just to slightly drop the revs down, because it's a fraction fast in the lowest speed, and in the high speed it really is fast. It's quite terrifying actually, but I only use it at this setting, so it's fine. Yeah, the belt looks nice and straight there. That's good. All the pulleys run pretty true. I mean, this pulley does have... Hello? That's all right. That was what was holding the phone up just now. Some's on the floor, some minor detail. I say this gear does run a fraction the outer true. I don't know whether it shows up. Yeah, you can see it wobbling slightly. So bearing in mind, it's had bits welded on. It's had another middle put in it. It was lumps missing here. It was bent. It was hammered. It was destroyed. I say it doesn't matter about the outside here because it's only for the back gear. So that's basically not a problem. So no, that's good. We have good success. All I've got to do now is put the two nuts on the end. Just load that up a little bit so that the thrust washers are starting to pinch up, and then put the gear back on here. A couple of grub screws in there, and we're good to go. So that's the fundamentals of that completed. A good oil up on everything, and that'll all be working nicely. It doesn't need any adjustments as such. I did them a while ago, so all the slides and everything are adjusted. The jib screws are all right. There's not too much movement in the saddle. It all runs very, very true. So bearing in mind what it went through, it's quite remarkable how well it does still run. Because I think somebody had actually used it for woodwork at some point, and it had been used for a lot of cast iron, because it was cast iron rust and residue sort of etched into everything, and a rusty sawdust layer on the top. So you can imagine what it looked like. I wish I had some pictures of it actually, because you probably wouldn't have believed how awful this thing was, considering how far it's come. And considering everything, when you put a test bar in here, it's still pretty much perfect in accuracy, or even along its length. I mean, you get up to here and it's still good, considering all odds. So you can't really grumble. Still, that's that one. So we've completed the exercise of changing the belt. So I'm just going to button up those last few things now, and that is all done. I might actually make another little video maybe later in the week or next week, giving the ML4 a good service. I do know that needs a few adjustments, because the old saddle's a bit slappy there, and there's a bit of end float in the top slide and cross slide and whatnot. So I might give that a little bit of maintenance and show you a few key points on that. But that's that horrible job done, and I think we can consign the old belt now to the bin. See, it's yeah, poor old thing. My dad's got had a belt like this, and he's Myford ML7 for years, and he's always trimming it up with the scissors we wear and everything, because that's actually got a different type of bearing. They have the bearing caps bolt down like a car big end bearing, and they do have selective shims in, and they go back okay, but you don't want to disturb them. And obviously these one being the pinch type are easier to adjust. I think we changed it in the end because it was just bits of fabric that were going round. I think he got his value out of it. So that one can go off. It's done its job. So I hope you enjoyed these part 2 on changing a belt and a bit of lathe maintenance. I know the machine videos I've featured before have been quite popular. So I thought, well, try something a bit different. So thanks very much indeed if you watched part 1, and if not, please watch that, and then you'll understand what this is all about, and vice versa. But thank you very much indeed for watching. All likes and subscribe are much appreciated, and bye for now.